First up, Liberia. Health workers there are struggling to identify people sickened with the Ebola virus before more people catch the deadly disease. The outbreak has paralyzed the country's public health system, and treatment units are having to turn some cases away.
Ann Look is VOA's correspondent in West Africa. Here she talks with me about her coverage of the outbreak and what authorities have been trying to do to stem this epidemic. Take a look. And we've heard so much about this Ebola outbreak and specifically the deaths that have been caused by it. But there are people surviving this. So tell us about which treatments are working.
It's a virus, so people can fight it off. Their bodies can fight it off. What I was seeing, I was there one day when survivors were being released from a government clinic, and one of the doctors told us that what he's really seeing is that people that seek treatment within those first 72 hours of symptoms are really showing the strongest chances of survival. The treatment they're getting in the Ebola, in the isolation units, is, rehydration therapy, antibiotics against secondary infections, food, just general care to keep their bodies strong so they can fight off the virus.
It's the height of the malaria and typhoid season, and those people need care. But Ebola also has similar symptoms. Suspected cases must be found and taken to isolation. The team hears there may be someone sick near the mosque, so they head that way. Is anyone sick here, they ask. Has anyone died recently?
The difficulty with this, of course, is getting people to seek out that treatment. What can you tell us about what you saw when you were in Liberia in terms of how that's changed?
Yeah, that's really, really evolving on the ground. I think, as more people have died, as more people have survived, people are really accepting it. That's not as much of an issue. Now the issue is keeping up with the demand for treatment and for services. The Ebola treatment units in the capital are completely overflowing. They're turning away sick people. The WHO says that they need 1,000 beds right now just in the capital to deal with the current demand. They have about a third of that.
Tell us about these health workers you accompanied as they went door to door looking for sick people.
It was interesting to go out with these volunteers because they were very delicately going door to door. They were genuinely looking for sick people, anyone with malaria, typhoid, but those are also the same symptoms as Ebola. And so they were looking for people who maybe need to be checked up on. And then, noting down their addresses and their names and giving those lists to health workers who then, I was told, will be going out and following up, and perhaps anyone that needed to be taken to the Ebola holding center would be taken there.
How did people respond to these volunteers? Did they welcome them, or were they a little bit skeptical?
Yeah, they were pretty skeptical. There was a lot of no, a lot of head shaking. The volunteers never used the word Ebola. They were being very diplomatic and really just kind of trying to gently go through the population one by one. But people were not fooled. People were saying things like, "Oh no, we don't have any patients here," referring to Ebola. So people weren't chasing them away with pitchforks, but they weren't exactly welcoming them into their homes, or at least most of them weren't.
So, Ann, what's the future of this? Is it going to get worse before it gets better?
That's what everyone's saying. I mean, when you see just the sheer numbers, for example, they need 3 times the amount of beds that they currently have to isolate patients. So every day that goes by when a sick person stays in their community, they stay in their home, they risk infecting more people and more people. The WHO is talking about exponential growth in cases. I think it's interesting to see some of the other strategies being put in place on the ground. For example, MSF and the government are looking into, things like giving families sanitation kits for home treatment. I spoke with one health worker who said, we'd never thought we'd look into this or we'd ever consider this for Ebola, but we have to. We have to find a way to deal with the fact that we can't get most people into the treatment units. So, the way ahead is perhaps those kinds of strategies, plus, just ramping up the response, more units, more education, more burial teams. It's very more when you're there on the ground.
Well, if you'd like to learn more about the Ebola outbreak, you can check out VOA's special reporting at voanews.com. And we also want to speak directly to those of you watching us on Sky TV in Monrovia. It is your turn now to tell the story. Send us your accounts of how the Ebola crisis has affected you. You can write to us on Facebook. Find us by searching VOA on Assignment.